There's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby, somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me. Hi. Hello. I'm Susan Schrott. Welcome to my studio here on Shelter Island. By day and sometimes by night into the evening, I'm a psychotherapist and I work specializing in eating disorders. But when I'm not doing that, I am in here. And this is, as cliche as it sounds, this is my very, very, very happy place, my sacred space where I create using textiles, watercolors, found objects, mixed media, and I sit at either this sewing machine, this workspace over here, which is this is my work table, this is my design wall, this is my other sewing machine, and then I'm surrounded by things that I love that help me create what you're looking at here today. This is was originally a garage when we bought this house, and I had it made into a studio, and we even kept the chandelier when we vaulted it. And it's really important to me that everything in this room has meaning and value to me, and everything is inspiring to me and has a sense of personal meaning. I said that, but I'll say it again, personal meaning. There's nothing in here that doesn't have a connection to me, my family, my life, my years and decades here on Shelter Island. So, first of all, I just want to mention that underneath this ironing pad is my great-great-grandfather's baking block, which I actually have just recently started using when I have to iron on top of this. Just as a matter of fact, if you iron on this, it's going to buckle. So we don't want things buckling. This has become so useful, and I love it, and I love that I have my great-grandfather here with me. Along those lines, I just want to add, I am deeply inspired by my family in my work, both my parents who are both artists, as well as my grandmothers, and my grandfathers who all came from different parts of Europe. So, yeah, just wanted to throw that in there because I'm not in here alone. I am, on many levels, I'm not in here alone. I'm not in here by myself. I'm with my foremothers, my forefathers, and also I am most certainly inspired by a very divine energy. Okay. What I have here are fabrics that I don't usually work with. These are commercial fabrics. If you look on my shelves here, these are my own hand-dyed fabrics, which I use for work that I typically do. But during COVID, I shut my studio down from an artistic perspective, so to speak, because I really kept creating. And I made over 1,100 masks and gave them away because I didn't know what else to do to be of service during COVID. And I'm now preparing for an exhibition that is that focuses on grief, joy, spirituality, and healing. And so I decided that when I was making the masks during COVID to try to save one mask from every bunch of masks I made with fabric. And in my mind, I had visualized putting together basically like an installment made of the mask. So that's what's happening here. And at the time when I made the masks, they were called masks made with love. And each mask will eventually be put up on the design wall, and somehow when they are made into masks, they will look like this, without, I'm visualizing without the elastic, and then they will just become another story. The story of, what one person, and as many of us did during COVID, and it'll become some version of, I'm thinking a heart, since they were masks made with love.
I got interested in art when I was a child, very young. I grew up in a very artistic home that was an environment where there was nothing but art. So it wasn't something I really thought about, it just was there. But I was interested in textile art, always. I had exposure to so much. Our home was more of an art home rather than a house. It was built around my parents' art world, and I was influenced by my mother, clearly, who was a painter, and our work kind of, I joke that I have a gene that people think my work looks a lot like hers, but I had two grandmothers who both knitted, and one knitted one part of the Russian-Polish way and one knitted the other Russian-Polish way, and they just threw yarn in my hand, and I loved yarn. I loved textile. And when I was 16, I took a singer sewing class at this mall in Brooklyn, and I learned how to sew with a pattern. I hated it because it was very detail-oriented, and I ended up making an itchy wool suit, but I really learned how to sew. I learned my craft. But then over the years I weaved, I had a loom, and it evolved into these wall hangings. So it's been my whole life. I've never not had fiber in my fingers.
This is #MeToo. As a psychotherapist, I work with a lot of women who have been severely traumatized, and this piece is a result of some of the work I've done with some extraordinarily courageous women, and it's really every woman. And I think I don't need to say that much about it, except I can talk about how I created it, which was each and every one of these was a 5 by 5 inch hand-dyed piece of fabric, which I then brought together to tell the story of all these women, and boarded it in a very serene frame, so to speak, and really enjoyed keeping the piece itself minimally thread painted, and saved all the thread work for the border to kind of contain it and, in a sense, have them feel secure and safe within the boundaries of this piece. Right here is a piece called 9 Faces of Women. This is a really wild piece for me, very different from pieces I usually have done, which are more pictorial. Each of these women is a hand drawing I did on white fabric. Everything here started out as white from a bolt. And I like to imagine that each of these women tells a story in her own voice, and yet they stand separate, but they're united as in a sense of sisterhood here. And it was really exciting to put the individual pieces together, not knowing ahead of time how it was going to end up. Each piece here is hand-painted, hand-dyed, hand-drawn, and then kind of feel like sometimes I'm an architect putting it together. I don't really have a set plan before I start, and I build it as I go, and I know it feels right when my body is relaxed. If there's tension in my gut, I know something needs to be moved or rearranged or realigned, or a different fabric has to be put in, but there's a sense of balance that I feel physically that lets me know the piece is balanced. This past winter of 2021, after making all the masks, which I would do well into the middle of the night because I was working and seeing patients during the day, I found that I really didn't have the inspiration to work on larger art pieces, and somehow picked up some watercolors. And I found working with them in the middle of the winter extremely healing, very, very relaxing and peaceful. And I just loved the the way that working with watercolors allowed me this sense of freedom that I don't usually have when I'm working with thread and textile, because that's very specific and much more controlled technique involved. And with watercolor, I was able to really kind of relax and stay present, and it got me through the winter. And I discovered I loved working with watercolors, and I found that they were very forgiving, and it's something new for me.
The Tree of Life for Pittsburgh happened because of the shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. And the night that it happened, my instinct was to create something that would bring the community together to make a Tree of Life for the people at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. And I called a good friend of mine at the Shelter Island High School, Kathleen Lynch, and by Sunday night I had a go-ahead to go to school the following Friday with all my fabrics prepared for the children of the entire Shelter Island School to write messages of hope and healing and love to the families and the community members down in that part of the country by the synagogue, at the Tree of Life Synagogue. This took me through the dead of winter. Everything on here was written by a child or a friend or a family member in the community. It has 11 branches to honor the memory of the 11 victims that were murdered, 11 doves circling the Tree of Life in memory of each person who was murdered. And my husband calligraphied a prayer in the center in Hebrew, which is a beautiful prayer protecting children and people and humanity. It's a prayer of hope and peace for safety for our loved ones. And this will be going down to the Tree of Life Synagogue. I've donated it, and I'm holding it until they're ready to reopen, and it'll be theirs. I'm gifting this to them from the Shelter Island community and myself. In 2017, I started working on a practice every single day of meditation, movement, prayer, and drawing. And at the time, I wasn't living here full time, which happened, by the way, because of COVID. I now work here full time. And I was frustrated because I couldn't have a studio during the week, so I decided to take 5x7 pieces of small fabric and take them back to the city with me. And so each morning I woke, meditated, did yoga, kind of came up with a daily affirmation to help me feel good about myself, the work I was going to be doing for the day, the people I had to help and support. And each day for 365 days I created daily drawings, and these are all on fabric, and an inspirational quote or affirmation. And it changed and evolved over the year as my father actually became sick and sicker and sicker, and my responsibilities grew in terms of taking care of him. And my mother, who thank God is alive and well and just turned 90. But each day I found myself really drawn to keeping this morning practice going. And at some point I realized that I needed to change the background so that the images of these figures could be anyone. So I started to just color the fabric so that the faces really had no color to speak of other than what the fabrics became. I used the background of the fabric as it was to be the face of each person. And it changed depending on what I was feeling, the seasons, what messages I was getting inspired and receiving as I prayed and meditated and did my morning practices. And at this point, the book is done. So this baby is now birthed and it's ready to be published. It is called Rise with Radiance, which is what I aimed to do every day that I did this practice. And I can't wait to share it with everyone. Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly. Birds fly over the
If happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow, why, oh,